Hey guys, welcome to another live stream. I'm going to try to do this probably once a week during the quarantine and usually on Fridays. So I'm going to play a little bit of Ubase, and then if you have any questions, please ask them. As of right now, I have no questions pre-planned, so just let me know if there's something you want answered. I'm going to start off with a little jam. Good evening. Right. So if anybody has any questions about anything or whatnot, just let me know. And otherwise, I'll just keep playing some stuff. You might recognize some things from last week, and I might just make up some new stuff. I've got the loop pedal once again. I want to check with everybody to make sure that the volume is good. If you feel like anything's too quiet or too loud, just let me know, and I'll be happy to fix it. I'm not sure that I've tried any of the Oscar Schmidt ones. If I have, it was I think I'm thinking of an Ohana, so I don't think I've actually tried any of those. But I'll keep that in mind if I see them to check them out. But yeah, as of right now, I don't think I've played one at all. But good question. All right, so the voice is loud, but the strings are good. Well, what I'll do is I'll turn the mic down. Let's see. And then I'll turn the bass up. Is the voice better now? If it's too quiet, let me know, but hopefully it's good. Yeah, my voice is a lot closer to the mic. The microphone's just off camera right here. So I'm sure that was really loud. Sorry about that. But yeah, so there we go. Let's see what questions we've got. You don't have a truss rod. Okay. So that's a little bit tougher because of the no truss rod part. What I would probably try first is figuring out if I can put something under the string at the nut. So the nut is this part right here. What I would try to do is figure out how to raise the string off of there. And is this on the open E string or just on the lower frets that it has the buzz, Seth? Let me know when you get a chance. But I would try to figure out some way to raise it. And if it's not raising up enough by putting something underneath there, you may have to buy a new nut for the bass ukulele. So if it's an off-brand, that might be kind of hard to do. But yeah, if it's the frets, buzzing, that might help a little bit. You raise the nut, and then you have to figure out how to raise it at the bridge as well. And you said which kind of strings? Thunderguts. Okay. The Thunderguts just vibrate a little bit more widely, so I would probably try a different kind of string. But mainly just figuring out how to raise the height would be good. You could also file the frets. So if you don't have a truss rod, if you realize that they're all buzzing against the same fret, like sometimes when you're pushing down here, they might be buzzing on the 5th fret or something. So if you can identify which fret's buzzing, you might be able to file that one down just a tiny bit is the other option with like a file. But those are really the only solutions that I can think of without a truss rod. You may have to ask somebody else that has a little bit more knowledge about what you can do with the neck, because I mean you don't want to warp the neck trying to do it. So your best bet's probably filing down some frets. Um, and if you like using the lower frets, but you're not concerned about some of the higher ones, if you can figure out that it's buzzing higher up by, I guess, just pushing down the frets and seeing if it's coming into contact with any of the other frets further up. So like let's say you're looking at it like this. If you're pushing down here and it looks like it's hitting a fret there or it's hitting a fret there, then it'll probably buzz. But those are the main options there. The other thing you could do is try a different technique with the right hand to minimize buzz. But if the buzz is from the instrument itself and not just from the fact that you're angling your hand too far in and not just playing parallel, then I can't really think of another solution. So filing the frets, raising the bridge and the nut somehow, which raising the bridge is kind of hard because that's also the pickup. So that makes things a little bit more difficult. But hopefully that helps a little bit. Let me know in the comments just in the future if you figure out something that fixes it. All right. Any more questions out there? All right. I'm going to try a song. Basically, the last few weeks when I was trying to do this one, the loop pedal was too full to really be doing it. So it would like fill up with such a long loop. But I deleted some stuff, so hopefully it'll work now. So Seth has another question. Have I ever heard of the Donner brand U-basses? Yes, I have heard of the Donner brand. I haven't gotten to play one, but I know that if you follow Bernadette that teaches ukulele lessons, she actually did a review of the Donner. So if you want to, you can find Bernadette. I think it's Bernadette Teaches Music. So look for her, search that in with Donner, and you'll probably find her review of it. And I think she did a pretty good review on that. But yeah, I might end up getting one in the future, but I've heard that they weren't as good in some ways from some people. So I prefer the Hadean or Hadean over them, just from my experience with that one being pretty good. Although you were talking about having issues with the frets, honestly, with that and with the Wanderer, I did have issues with the frets, and I had to loosen the truss rod to give the neck a little bit more of a curve like this rather than it being flat, so that those notes wouldn't buzz. So as far as my answer to you earlier on the fret buzz, I think that I wouldn't do this, but if you need a slight more of a bend, maybe there's some sort of way to do that, but I can't really see how to without putting stress on the instrument. But yeah, I would check out that review, but I'm not sure that I've heard too many great things about Donner. I haven't heard too many bad things either, though. So I would definitely do some more research and listen to the way it sounds when it's being played. Okay. Are there any more questions out there? All right. I'm just going to come up with something. Let's see what's a little bit different than that. Oop, accidentally hit. I'm going to do a little slap jam because that sounds kind of fun. So I'm going to do this one in A. But basically, if y'all want to, you can give me a key to play in, and I'll make something up in that key. So I'm going to do this one in A, and I'm probably going to use like a Mixolydian kind of sound. So that's one of the modes of the major scale for those that don't know. And I've done a lesson on it in the past that might help. This will be A Mixolydian. So Robert, knowing both of what? Now I'm looping it. So now it's looped. It's probably enough loops. So usually if I get that many loops going and it starts sounding kind of crazy, I like to fade it out. So for those wondering what I'm doing, I started with a bass line that was slapped, where I was basically going. I can't remember what it was now. It was somewhere around there using those notes. I've already forgotten what the groove was. And then after that, I added a little rhythm track. So I was looping these with the loop pedal. Then I was just adding some time to it like that. And after that, I decided to add some chords. And basically what I was doing there, at first I was like, oh, I'll just play down here. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of low. So I added a higher note with it. So the result of those two together ended up sounding like. And then after I got into that, I was just thinking about the Mixolydian mode for a while and making up stuff. And then every now and then I'd add some chromatics where I would just fill in the gaps between the notes, starting on a note that's in the scale and ending on a note that's in really even the chord, not just the scale. So that's kind of what I was doing there. So Robert, with your question, what are the pros and cons of knowing both? When you say knowing both, do you mean the two things that are in the shot, knowing U-bass and knowing upright bass? Do you mean knowing the different types of strings, knowing the flat wound strings, knowing the rubber strings, knowing the round wound strings? I'm just not quite sure what you're asking, but when you let me know, I'll be happy to answer it. Oh, forgot to turn the loop up. There it is. It's the problem with fading out. Sometimes you forget to turn the volume back on. Now it needs a bass line. nice little blues pattern. So I decided to do a blues in D. See the previous message. I don't see a previous message. Oscar Schmidt. Cutouts. I don't think I see a previous message that sounds like it applies to. The previous message from you is the first message where you said evening. And the previous message from Seth was, have I heard of the Donner brand? So if you sent another one, it didn't send to me. So just resend it. So once again, Robert, I don't see another message. I'm not sure if it's just not sending all of them. But what are the pros and cons of knowing both? The Donner brand, I think it just didn't send. All right, well, if you're still there, just let me know. I'll be glad to do that. Maybe the messages just aren't working right. Let me know. Someone send a message right now and just let me know if the messages are working. I'm going to play one that I play every week called Green Tea. Oh, there you are. Hey, Robert. Starting major scale with the middle finger versus starting with the index finger. So you're saying this versus this. So basically, some people's hands don't stretch far enough to do the second one. The one that uses index on the third fret. Sorry, I should say third fret on the first note of the scale, the middle finger on the second note of the scale, and the pinky on the third note of the scale. So this is just two different ways of playing a major scale. There's really a whole bunch of ways to play a major scale. You could play it all on one string, and you could play it some other ways. The reason that I like using the version that plays with the middle finger first is because then we stay in this little box, so we don't have to stretch our hand out as far. We can just stay in that little box of one finger is assigned to one fret, so you know exactly what fret your fingers are over the entire time. Whereas with this other version, your hand has to stretch out a little bit more, which is totally fine. But the advantage to this version is if you wanted to continue up the scale, you get more notes out of that position. And see, I didn't have to shift up or anything, but with the other version, you'd have to shift up to get there, like right here. So basically, if you're staying in one little part of the neck, just staying down here and grooving somewhere like that, then you might want to just use the first scale pattern that starts with your middle finger and uses 2 notes on the first string and then shifts down to the next string. So basically the question is about, really, do you want to play the third note of the scale, which in G is a B note, as the second fret on the A string, or do we want to add 5 frets to it and keep it on the E string? And so if we're staying low on the neck and the whole entire groove, we're not trying to do a fill that goes high, I would say use the one where your hand is closer together, and then that way you're not having to stretch out, because when you play with your hand stretched for a long period of time, that can cause some hand problems. So in general, we want to keep our hand in a close position like this rather than a spread out one. But if you're doing something quick and you're wanting to be able to go higher up the neck after starting low, then using the stretched out version puts your hand already further up the neck to continue on. So I hope I answered your question for you. If you have another part of that question, let me know. Cool, Paul. I'm glad you're enjoying it. One thing that I really like, speaking of stretching, which it's not, like I said, it's not the best thing for your hand to do it all the time, but when I play full-size electric bass and I try to do some of these arrangements, my hand will only stretch between like the 3rd fret and the 7th fret. But with the U-bass, if I put my thumb down low and I really stretch my hand out, I can stretch pretty far, so I can do some chords and some melody lines while keeping the bass note low without having to do tapping or something. But yeah, so I kind of utilize that in some of the arrangements that I do. But lately, I've been trying to keep things a little bit closer so that you guys don't have to stretch quite as far trying to learn those arrangements. So this is a song that I wrote a couple years ago, back when I had my first U-bass. This was the first song that I wrote on it, and it's called Going Camping. Let's see if I can remember how to do it. I always like adding a little bit to it every time. So this time I added a section where I was doing hammer-ons and pull-offs with my pinky and my pointer finger while leaving my middle finger on the low G string. Sorry, not the low G string, the low G note on the E string, 3rd fret on the E string. And then I had fun going down to the C note and doing the same thing over it because and then so if you kind of know a little bit of theory, I was basing that around a 1-4-5 progression. So the G is the 1 in the key of G, meaning it's the first note. So the G chord would be built off the first note. Then the C is the 4th note of the scale. So I'm really just doing the same thing, but thinking about it being like a C chord and then doing it like it's a D chord here. So that's kind of what I was doing there. Hey, Gary, how's it going? So you have this bass, the Journeyman, the red Journeyman. Did you replace the strings with the flat wounds as well? Because I've been really enjoying the flat wounds. I had the round wounds on it originally, which is what it comes with. And it's been fun doing the flat wounds instead. And does anybody else have a question or maybe a request or something? Awesome. So you like the flat wounds as well. Yeah, they're a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun. Cool. Let's see. I'm going to try something. Yeah, this might be kind of tricky. I'm going to try it without thinking too hard about it. So if I have to change some stuff around, it might you might or might not recognize the song after that. Let me do it again because I threw myself off a little bit. I don't know what I'm doing today. See how this goes. Wow, I can't remember melodies at all. Awesome. I'm glad that you like that song too. Okay, so the loop pedal that I'm using right now is the Digitech Jam Man. I'll see if I can hold it up without it crackling. Please don't crackle. Okay. And this is an older version of it. They have a version that's just a single pedal, and then they have a version that has 4 switches on it. And you get more options with that. And I think you can turn off multiple loops and turn on multiple loops with that. I'm not exactly sure if that's what it's for, or if it's just to be able to stop it and delete it with one click instead of having to like hold it down to delete. But there's something like that. Have I tried any other pedals with my uke? I think I did distortion. I did a metal video at some point, and you can look for it, where I just decided to do some distortion. And then this PA system has some delay, so I might be able to throw some delay on here, and just got to remember to turn it back off when I go to loop again. Let's see, the effects are up here. There's some reverb. How do I change the effects? Oh, the knob to change the effect is broken. It's missing. Well, I've got some reverb. Now it'll sound like I'm in a slightly bigger room. Ooh, sounds like the E-Bass went out of tune a little bit. But that's a great question about effects. I actually found an effects pedal recently, and my plan was to hook it up, but I need an extra cable to do that with the loop pedal. Oh, an iPad. Very cool. Cool. All right. So I'm going to do another loop pedal jam once I get rid of this reverb. Okay. What kind of vibe would you like on this loop pedal jam? Give me a style and a key. So I'm just going to just wait for you guys to give me a style and a key to play in. yeah, just let me know. And if you have any other questions, let me know as well. Reggae and A. Reggae and A. That almost sounds like I could do a song or something. A particular song that already exists. Maybe I'll just make something up instead. It's supposed to be like a bass drum. It's got too much of a click to it. It almost sounds like Stirred Up, doesn't it? Almost sounds like the verse. Well, I did the changes too quickly to make it work. Oh well. What time is it in Western Australia? 12 hours different, huh? 12 hours different, I guess. Well, happy Sunday. This is actually the Journeyman. All right. So yeah, the Journeyman, and this one originally came with round wound strings, and I replaced them with the flat wound strings. I have a Wanderer over here. The Wanderer with the rubber strings. You know what? I might as well switch to that and do a little, what was it? Folk song in what key did you say? I believe, yeah, Robert wanted a folk song in D. Folk rock. Let's see. Oh. So I may have to tune this first. And does anybody else have any more questions while I'm tuning? You said more bass playing this year? Like you're getting to play more? Do you have to change anything to change the strings? That's a great question. So with the Journeyman, I did. They recommend that you change the nut, but I was too lazy to do that. So what I ended up having to do was file the groove a little bit wider. So basically, most of the strings fit. The G string I didn't have to do anything for. The D string and the A string I didn't really have to do anything for. I may have a little bit on the A. I can't remember, honestly. But on the E string, the groove is smaller because the round wound strings are slightly smaller gauged. So I had to file it to make it large enough to fit that. And they just recommend that you replace it with the one that you'd normally have for rubber strings, because the rubber strings are even a thicker gauge. But that's the only thing that I did. There might be some other things that you could do, but it's been playing fine, and I like the way it sounds and feels. So you don't have to do anything else, if that helps a little bit. Okay, so without the amp, it's really too quiet. I would say if you were gonna play, like you can kind of hear what it sounds like while I'm doing this. If you were gonna do that, I think I'd recommend the round wound strings. So let me get my exotic mahogany out. So the round wound strings will project better. But that's because they're brighter, and you lose a lot of that low frequency still with any of it, because it just doesn't carry very far. But yeah, I would say that you can get away with it when you're playing with one other person, like a ukulele player, and they're playing fingerstyle really quietly. But otherwise, probably not. All right, so how can I do a folk rock song in D? I'm not even sure what would qualify as folk rock. Might do something. I'm not sure if this is folk rock, but I'll try something. out some time. So if you're wondering how you can use a major scale, that's a really good example I just did. So you can tell my Wanderer still buzzes a little bit up high. When I did the truss rod adjustment, I kind of overdid it because I really didn't want any buzz down here. So it just moved the buzz up high. Oh well, only way up here. If I play light enough, it doesn't do it. I'm not sure if I consider that a folk rock, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. It was in D. And yeah. All right. So does anybody have any last questions? I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with the playing. unless one of the questions has to do with playing something, and I can maybe give a demonstration or something. But does anybody have any final questions for today? Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. So just let me know. I'll give you about a minute to come up with questions, and I'll kind of noodle or play one of my songs maybe as an outro. But if you have a question, I'll answer it afterwards. So I was looking at the questions while I was playing, and I thought about the answer instead of about what I was playing. All right. So what turned me on to Ubases? Well, there was one at the shop that I worked at like almost a decade ago, and I was teaching lessons there, and I saw it on the wall, and I thought they were kind of interesting, and I probably pulled it down and noodled with it. But at the time, they were like way expensive for what they were, and I believe it was like an old Rumbler model, or it might have been before they had the name for it. And so then later on, I ran across somebody that had it at a gig, and they let me play it for a minute, just in between sets. And it was a friend of mine that was playing bass with them, and it was a fretless Rumbler. And I remember playing on it and thinking, man, that sounds an awful lot like Chameleon, like. I don't want to teach y'all the line wrong. But it has that kind of bounce to it that the synthesized bass did on that track. So I thought it was really cool, and ended up kind of getting into it a little bit more because of that. And then I have a friend that runs a ukulele website, and he actually wanted a Ubass section to the site. So I really got it to do some videos for him, and then ended up liking it a lot and just kept playing them. All right. Let's see. Have I ever substituted the uke bass for the upright bass? Well, that one that I was playing here at the very end before I messed it up, that one actually is for upright bass. So I originally wrote it on upright, and I'll just demonstrate it real quick, just to give you an idea. Although you won't be able to see my head, I'm sure. Whoop. So to fully answer your question, I've also used it on gigs. So I played that song and a couple other songs off my jazz album, and just cover songs and other stuff too. And yes, somebody in the audience commented that if they weren't looking up there, they wouldn't have known I wasn't playing an upright bass. And there was someone that wasn't familiar with Ubass before that, so I thought that was pretty cool. But that's the answer is yes, I actually have filled it in for upright, and the results were pretty cool, pretty good. When you walk around on it, it kind of has that vibe. But yeah, it actually works pretty well with the rubber strings, especially. The round wounds, not so much. They won't sound like an upright bass. They'll just sound kind of like a small acoustic electric bass. If that's the sound you're going for, they're really good for that and have a lot of harmonic resonance. And the flat wound strings are somewhere in between. You could kind of use them to sound sort of like an upright, but they kind of have their own sound at the same time. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I will see you guys probably next week. I might do it a little bit earlier in the day. I'm thinking, I start at 7 today. I might start at 5 as my goal, but I'll let you guys know a little bit in advance, hopefully next time. So take care. Have a good one, and thanks for hanging out.